What's up, guys? It is your boy Simone Fennel, and we're here at last. At least for a day or two. Finally, after what? Marathoning 21 films, I am finally at the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have reviewed every single movie that has been released in my vicinity up to this point. This is my last review until I see Avengers Endgame with my two buddies, who are both brothers. This is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp was released in June, or July, I should say, of 2018, at least here in the US. It is, of course, a sequel to Ant-Man, but it is also it's not just a sequel to Ant-Man, it also is a follow-up to to the events of Captain America Civil War and the repercussions that took place in that film enter in this film. Once again, this film is directed by Peyton Reed, who never had the best track record before Ant-Man, but all of a sudden, he got Ant-Man, and it's like, damn, the guy knows how to make an Ant-Man film, if nothing else. It was produced by Kevin Feige and Steve Broussard. I'm not exactly sure why there was a co-producer in this case. He didn't produce the first Ant-Man film, so I'm assuming he was brought on the set on this film for whatever reason. It had a budget of $162 to $195 million. I'm assuming the number is somewhere in the middle, obviously. Closer to the middle. And it made $622 million worldwide in theaters, which is, you could say, is almost disappointing compared to the over $2 billion that the Avengers made. But to be fair to that film, and this film tried to be a different kind of a beast to Avengers Infinity War, because they knew they weren't going to be able to follow it up, so they wanted to create something that was a little bit more fun, that toned down a few things, but was still enjoyable, and could watch it for the most part without watching Avengers Infinity War. You have certain things going for it. Let's get the review out of the way. What's the story? Well, it's been 2 years after the events of Ant-Man, and about not 2 years. It was 2 years after the events of Captain America: Civil War, and something that they brought up in the Infinity War movie, and they didn't bring up, and I'm gonna bring it up here. Both Scott Lang and Clint Barton, aka Ant-Man and Hawkeye, took deals with the government in order to be placed on house arrest, because they, of course, violated the Sokovia Accords by interfering with the whole thing that happened in the Battle of Leipzig, the airport battle in Captain America: Civil War. Ant-Man and Hawkeye got captured by the government and took deals with the government to be taken back to America under the deal that they would be placed on 2 years house arrest. Now we come to 2 years later after that, and Scott Lang only has a few days left on his house arrest. And since then, not only that, but since then, because he used the technology that was created by Hank Pym and Hope Van Dyne, both of them are also on the run from the government as well, and are understandably pissed off at Scott for going to Germany to fight alongside Captain America and the rest of the Avengers without even so much as telling him that he was even going to do it. So that's kind of the basic plot, or how it starts out. Ant-Man, or should I say Scott, has a dream while under house arrest of coming across Janet Van Dyne, and of course Janet being Hope's mother and Hank's loved one, Hank's wife. And he came, and you can actually kind of see it. Go back and watch the first Ant-Man film when he goes subatomic. If you look at his left visor, of course, on the screen it'll be to your right, but if you look at his left visor, you can see like the shadow of a person. I think that was Janet. That's my belief, of course. But either way, he may have had what Hank Pym called quantum entanglement with Janet, in the quantum realm, and and after revealing this information through a secret phone that he had to contact Hank and Hope, they basically re-recruit him and basically use him as a way to try to find Janet. Because also since the events of the first, not even Civil War, but since the events of the first Ant-Man film, Hope and Hank have been working on a machine in order to go to the quantum realm. And of course, after the quantum realm experience that Scott experienced at the end of the first Ant-Man movie, they believe that, of course, Janet is still alive somewhere down there, and that they and that they have a chance to find Janet and bring her back after over 30 years of being gone. Now, and of course, this is where the plot takes in. A bunch of shit happens. They go to a buyer of their... Well, not a buyer, but a person who's been giving them the equipment they need to build the machine. They go to get the last part by a guy by the name of Sonny Birch, who's basically a gangster. He figured out at some point who, quote-unquote, Susan was, and because Hope was using the pseudonym of Susan, and figured out that she was Hope Van Dyne, and also figured out that they were building quantum realm technology. He wants to keep the technology, but takes the money that's given to them by Hope, because apparently they're loaded. Sonny Birch in this film, played by Walton Goggins, definitely one of the more unique names I've come across. And of course they fuck up, because since the events of Ant-Man, they have built, and it was in the post-credit scene that there was another Wasp outfit that originally was going to be meant for Janet, but as it turned out, they used it on Hope, and now Hope is now the Wasp, and she turns into her Wasp outfit, kicks all kinds of ass, beats their asses up, before coming across an entity that eventually is known as Ghost. Ghost goes after not only the technology that Sonny Birch inadvertently gave her, but also steals the lab that they've been working on. A lab, of course, being a giant building that can be shrunken down to the size of a suitcase. And they've been using this lab in order to build the quantum realm teleporter thing. So, with the help of Ant-Man, who of course has a new suit thanks to experimental new suit, because it's not because it's only a work in progress. He helps out. They go on kind of little journey. They find Bill Foster, who is able to point them in a weird direction of how to find the lab, because the lab, as it turns out, Scott, who originally was thought to have destroyed the suit from Captain America: Civil War, actually didn't destroy it and mailed it to Luis by shrinking it down. And, well, of course, mailing it to them. They go to the suit. They find it in his daughter's school because she used it, and because the suit was in a trophy called The World's Greatest Grandma and all that stuff. But cute things little here and there. Michael Pena, of course, is back as Luis, as well as the two friends from the last film. Bunch of shit goes down. They come across Ghost, who is actually a girl called Ava Starr, played in this film by Hannah John Kamen, who actually does a very good job in her role, and she's being helped out by Bill Foster. Apparently, Ava Starr, in her background, her father was a scientist that worked alongside Hank during their days at S.H.I.E.L.D. And whether you believe one side or the other, he was ousted, and his name was ruined for good measure, and also experimented with quantum realm technology. But an explosion took place in which killed both her father and her mother, and had her molecules, stitched up and torn apart for years, ever since she was just a little girl. And she was taken in by S.H.I.E.L.D. to be an agent for them. And after the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D., she was a big, being a killer and everything. After the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D., she came to Bill Foster, who originally found her in her messed up state back in the day. And hang on, my left ear is like infected with something right now. and now they're working together in order to take the quantum realm energy that Janet has stored for 30 years, and give it to Ava in order to cure her. Because even though she's got the ghost powers, the problem is that she can't completely control the powers, not all the time at least. So then they want to cure her, or else she'll just completely disappear and basically die. You have a bunch of so you have that. Then of course it's what I would like to call chasing after the MacGuffin thing, because eventually Sonny Birch comes back in from time to time to try to steal the lab because he wants to sell it to a buyer. That's never revealed who the buyer is in this film. I'm assuming when they make an Ant-Man 3, they'll reveal who the buyer is. And in this case, I was about to say in this case, but yeah, a large chase scene near the end of the film happens between Ghost, between Ant-Man and the Wasp, and between Sonny Birch and his men. And the climax, and I know I'm kind of skipping details here, but certain details like Hank and Hope do eventually get arrested and go to jail, but then Ant-Man breaks him out of it. But those are minor things. I want to just get to the main point, because I know I'm rattling on. Large chase scene happens. Sonny Birch gets acted like a little bitch. Hope and Scott throughout the film reconnect, and they eventually do become an item by the end of the film. Janet comes back, who in this film is played by Michelle Pfeiffer, after Hank went into the quantum realm to save her. They brought her back. Bill Foster's trying to calm Ava down, even though it's not working, because she's desperate to heal herself. And Janet, because of the quantum realm technology, because of the quantum realm stuff that she's done, because she's a somewhat different person, still lovable, but she's got like quantum realm powers anyhow, and is able to at least temporarily cure Ava of her illness. You then of course have the post and end credit scenes. The ending, of course, you got the ex-con security is up and running. Ex-con security is up and running, which of course ex-con security, that's basically all the ex-cons from the first film, that being of course Scott, Luis, Dave, and God, what's the other guy's name? Kurt. And so you have that. Janet and Hank reunite, put their house on a beach. You see, Cassie, who of course is Scott's daughter. Cassie, Hope, and Scott have spending quality time together, which is all kinds of funny. And then of course you have the mid post-credit scene. Just to tell you what the post-credit scene is, it's just something dumb that was actually in the trailer. It's the ant playing a rock band, the rock band drum things, at home, at Scott's home, I should say. But the mid-credit scene, that's where the last real thing happens. Hank, Scott, Janet, and Hope plan to harvest quantum realm energy, so that way they can keep Ava's, Ava can remain stable and not be all ghosty again. Lang goes into the quantum realm, gathers up the energy, but what happens is but when that happens, the other three people disintegrate. Hank, Hope, and Janet, they all disintegrate. Of course, this happened this particular mid-credit scene happened during the events of Avengers Infinity War, in which Thanos, of course, did the almighty snap, and half the universe died and was disintegrated into dust. We saw the same thing happen to the likes of Bucky Barnes, Spider-Man, Scarlet Witch, Sam Wilson, Groot, Sam Wilson, of course, being Falcon, most of the Guardians of the Galaxy, except for Nebula and Rocket, and Doctor Strange on top of that. So so many people die. Of course, also Nick Fury and Maria Hill. So same thing happened to basically the entire Pym Van Dyne family, and he's stuck in the quantum realm because they have to pull him out. And, of course, they disintegrated. So that, of course, leads into the events of Avengers Endgame. And I'm like, man, you look at Ant-Man and the Wasp. That film leads more into the events of Avengers Endgame than Captain Marvel does. All that Captain Marvel did was introduce a new character, and that was it. Same thing with Black Panther before Avengers Infinity War. Thor Ragnarok much more closely was connected to Infinity War, but Black Panther was kind of its own side story that only connected due to the fact that it had Black Panther in it. It was very much a solo film. So, okay. After all that, what do I think of the film? Well, I think this is a very good film. I think this is better than the first movie. It doesn't rank there as one of the all-time great MCU films, but still very good. What do I say? The casting. Everyone who returns from the first film does great. Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, God, I'm already forgetting his name. Michael Douglas, who they have respectively played Scott, Hope, and Hank from the first movie. Michael Pena as Luis. Not only is he back in this film, but he actually gets more screen time in this movie than he does in the first movie. Because I guess they realize, hey, Luis is super entertaining and we can use him and he's funny. Sadly, we don't get too much more screen time with Tip Harris as Dave, Tip T.I. Harris as Dave, and David Dastmalchian as Kurt. I really do like those guys. And I wish we would have gotten a little bit more with them. But what we got with them was pretty good. It was funny. Bobby, I will say, not that I'm disappointed or mad, or should I say mad, but I was a little bit disappointed by the fact that we didn't get more of Scott's family. And what I mean by Scott, now, we got enough of Cassie. Cassie I'm alright with. But I wish we would have gotten just a little bit more of Judy Greer as Maggie and Bobby Cannavale as Jim Paxton, because now they're all buddy-buddy now with Scott. They completely support what he's doing as Ant-Man. They know he's technically a criminal, but they don't care because they know he's trying to do the right thing and is being a hero that sometimes must operate outside the law, and they realize that. And Jim Paxton and Maggie, I do really like them in this film. In the first film, they were angry at him, but you can understand it. In this film, they're a lot more forgiving and understandable and likable. But problem is, we don't get enough of them. We do like them, though, in the scenes that they're in. I just wish we would have gotten more of them. Speaking of which, Abby Ryder-Fortson as Cassie. I loved Abby Ryder-Fortson as Cassie. She did great in the job. She was super charming. She was written well. She's played by a good actress, which Fortson is. She's a good actress. She's super charming, super adorable. She's just so much fun to watch. You also have Randall Park, who plays Jimmy Woo, who's an FBI agent who also happens to be Scott Lang's patrol officer. He appears sporadically throughout the film and is very funny. Because he's like the awkward FBI agent where he don't always know. He's not always serious, and he treats Scott like he's a friend, but also wants to capture Scott because it's his big break in the FBI. So I actually did like him. Lawrence Fishburne as Bill Foster. I really enjoyed Lawrence Fishburne's role, and the fact that he wasn't a bad guy, and you understand 100% why he did what he did, and why of course, he might feel bitter towards Hank Pym. You understand it. You understand it, and let's just say that that he does a pretty good. He did a pretty good job as Lois Lane's boss in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. I think he does an even better job here as Bill Foster. Now, apparently, Bill Foster in the comics is a character called Goliath, who apparently is a superhero in the comics, but they don't go the superhero route. He's kind of just a pudgy Lawrence Fishburne. They rewrote the character, and I don't mind that. Ava Starr, as who played by Hannah John Kamen. I thought she did great in this role. I know some people might say that they were underwhelmed by her performance, and considering the fact that she came off right after Thanos from Avengers Infinity War, I'm not at all surprised that they feel that way. But looking back, she's actually a pretty good villain, but she's not. But again, much like Bill Foster, she's not completely 100% the bad guy. Hang on. You understand why she's doing what she's doing, and ultimately, the only thing that makes her a villain is her extremes the extremes that she will go in order to save her life. That is the only reason. That is the only thing that makes her a villain. Aside from that, she does a very good job in the in the role of or should I say, Ava Starr Ghost as a very good character. And while not as strong as the last 5 villains that we've gotten from Guardians of the Galaxy to Infinity War, she still ranks up there as, like, again, one of a list of the great villain, you know, hit in a row, which definitely stopped at Captain Marvel, because while we got a couple good villains there, things were switched around, and yeah, good but not great. In this film, she was a great villain in my view. Maybe not too much screen time, but considering the other things that were going on in the film, I could kind of forgive it. And the fact that, again, she's not 100% the villain, so they got her backstory out of the way. They got the key scenes with her, so I didn't mind it. Walton Goggins as Sonny Birch, he is the stereotypical bad guy, but he was also entertaining. Goggins was in the role as Birch, and I thought, okay, that's actually kind of he was actually very entertaining. So you had that. You had, hang on, there we go. The special effects. I really like the special effects. And this was the first of 2 films that did the de-aging process when it comes to de-aging older actors. Hang on. They did it in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. They did it eventually with Captain Marvel. And they did it here. And again, I think here it really works. Michelle Pfeiffer looks, whenever they do use it, she looks the way she did back in the day, back in the 1980s. Hank Pym, should I say Michael Douglas looks very much younger. I didn't even recognize that was Michael Douglas until someone pointed out to me. It's like, holy shit, it's Michael Douglas young. I didn't even realize that. Then, you had a brief scene with Lawrence Fishburne, who also does the de-aging thing, again in a brief flashback, and again, they do a very good job with it, aside from the fact that he's so pudgy, but you just kind of have to deal with that. Lawrence Fishburne, he's not the skinny guy that we remember as Morpheus from The Matrix. He's gotten older, so let's give him a break on that one. So yeah, the special effects are great, the shrinking the cars thing, I think, is a really fun, neat concept that they did. We got more of the Quantum Realm stuff, which looked pretty freaking badass. Got fun action and good stuff all around. Are there any negatives? Well, here's my thing with the movie. It's weird because I don't think there's a lot of negatives in this movie so much as it downgrades things purposefully. There are a couple minor gripes, I have to say. All the characters do their job, all the action, it's just a couple minor things. One thing is, they made it a point in the first film that in order to shrink down and go big and everything, you need to be wearing a specialized helmet in the film. So that way, it doesn't affect the brain's chemistry negatively, which is what led Darren Cross to be an evil bastard. But in this film, you see people shrink down. Hang on. In this movie, you see people shrink down, well, not giant size, but you see people shrink down, and, well, yeah, there is a moment where Scott goes giant, and the helmet comes off. Like, for example, whenever anybody's in the car, whether it's Scott Lang, or Hope Van Dyne, or Hank Pym, or even Luis at one point shrinks down. None of them were wearing the helmets when they're shrinking down in the cars. I'm like, okay, that was inconsistent. That was a little bit inconsistent. And while I eventually got to the point where it didn't bug me, I still thought that's still an inconsistency with the movie. Another thing that I found was a little what was weird was that, and I heard this online, and I do kind of agree. The plot does kind of jump around from moment to moment. In a weird way, it shares the same level of storytelling that kind of a solo Star Wars story does, where it gets to a point where they're seemingly jumping around from place to place trying to find their plot. Now, in Ant-Man and the Wasp's case, it's more forgivable because you know what they're trying to do, and it's fun the way you're doing it. And what I like about it is that the movie makes it easy for you to follow along, and I can enjoy that. While Solo: A Star Wars Story had problems doing this, Ant-Man and the Wasp, I had absolutely no problem with following the movie. I know some people did. I didn't have a problem with following it at all. So it's more, I think it's funnier than the first. The first film was very funny. This film had just as many jokes. It was more entertaining. It had more of Michael Pena. It's not a big film. It does kind of downgrade things into more of a good comic book film rather than an amazing one, but they did that because they knew they weren't going to be able to follow up Avengers Infinity War, how big and epic that film. It's not like when the first Avengers film came out, and the films that came out after it were going to be big, like Thor: The Dark World, Iron Man 3, Captain America: Winter Soldier, both Guardians of the Galaxy films, Civil War. With Ant-Man, they know what to give us with Ant-Man. They make it a more, you could say, a more personal story. One other criticism I heard about the movie is that you don't get a lot of actual character development in your main characters like you did in the first film. But that, I think, is something that people don't get. We already got the main character development in the first film, and nothing really radically changed aside from Hank Pym, aside from trying to find Janet and Scott having to gain the trust and respect back from both Hope and Hank. In a lot of ways, this film doesn't need as much character development because it knows exactly what it needs to be. A nice, fun comic book film that slightly progresses the main characters and what they're doing, but it's just a nice, cheesy comic book film that's very enjoyable, that's still quality the MCU standard. And as MCU standard go, it's very good, very similar to previous films like, say, Thor, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man: Homecoming. I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. It's a really good film, not a great film. It's not even as good as the first two Avengers movies. It's kind of below that. I would probably rank it slightly above Thor, but just slightly, in terms of which order I like the films. So yeah, 8 out of 10. Well, until next time, guys, be well, stay safe, have a good day. Make sure to like, comment, and or subscribe down below. I will be reviewing Avengers Endgame sometime this weekend or even next week. I want to listen to all the reviews before I make my... Because I don't want to go into Avengers Endgame, watch the movie. Because with Captain Marvel, I kind of knew what to expect. With Endgame, I don't really know what to expect. So I'm going to watch the film, and instead of going immediately to a review that could be completely biased and I could miss details that maybe there is a flaw here and there, much like with Avengers Infinity War, where you got, the couple lines that I kind of said, made fun of. In this case, I'm going to wait, watch some other reviews, see if that review jogs with what I believe or doesn't jog with what I believe. Then I can come up with my own opinion, and then I'll see. And then I'll review the movie. So until next time, guys, be well, stay safe, have a good day. I'll see you next time, guys, when I review the movie. Hope you all have a good day, and until next time, guys, peace.